Hi, this is Dr. Andy Aldrin. I am the director of the ISU Center for Space Entrepreneurship.
I am Jason Aspiotis, founder and CEO of FinSophy.
Hi, my name is Jan van der Veen. I'm head of strategy and managing director for OGB Venture Capital.
And I listen to the Cold Star Project.
And I listen to the Cold Star Project.
And I listen to the Cold Star Project.
There's this gap in industry knowledge and understanding of what the industry really is. It's held by insiders like yourself and that kind of stuff. You spend years or decades in this industry, you start to understand what's going on. But we envision bringing a lot of net new investors and net new space investors. And there needs to be a way to get caught up on what this industry is pretty quickly. And as a result of building that, that's where we came across, we started pulling all these companies together. There's some of them that may raise in our platform, some that may be way beyond our platform, some that may be too early. And we started creating this cool little data set, and that's where our data set of space-based came about, right? We need to be able to understand the industry ourselves to be able to figure out what's a good opportunity for our platform and our investors. We also feel like our investors should be able to come in and just have a good knowledge of space within 5 minutes, have learned a lot more about space than they would have left to their own devices.
Time for another episode of the Cold Star Project, the podcast about space companies, the unexpected challenges of growing companies, and all sorts of wonderful things. I'm here with Aaron Burnett. He is co-founder of Space Ventures. You may have a recollection that we had somebody on about Space Ventures before, and that was Brent Arsenault. And they are co-founders, and we've gotten to a point now where Space Ventures is out in the wild. Before it was in its infancy and not quite released into the wild. But now Aaron tells me there's some cool data set stuff going on. We're going to dig into that. But I wanted you on, Aaron, because that shift has been made, and I personally have had a lot more experience with the commercial space field and investing. I mean, this is season 3 of the Cold Star Project, all about investing in the space field, right? Venture capitalists and folks like Dylan Taylor at Voyager, who has a slightly different model, going out and investing in space companies, and you guys fit right in there. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Jason. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different investing models out there, and Dylan's a friend of Space Ventures, and he's we love what he's doing. I think there's room for everyone to make things happen, and we just need to get this thing funded. It's the way I look at it.
That's the slogan. We just need to get this thing funded. So
exactly. Right?
Let's begin with this then. I'd like to hear, in your words, the value you are bringing to the space community with Space Ventures.
Yeah. So I come from the space geek side, self-proclaimed space geek, and have always been. Falcon Heavy launches and things like that really woke me up to it, and I wanted to get involved. I always have worked with startups, so it's natural to go into the startup side of things and start talking with founders and things like that. And very quickly, it became evident there's this huge seed funding gap that exists, very early stage funding gap for space companies. There's a lot of mechanisms that make that happen. Intricacies, nuances. The reality is that space is difficult, space is asset heavy, and unlike a software company that may be able to get a decent product out there for $50,000, maybe a little bit more with all the legal fees or what have you, that there's nothing like that for space, very, very rarely. And so they just need a lot more, a lot sooner, and you start spending a lot of money from day one. And so that's what we found. There's just not enough people willing to take that risk, that amount of risk that early. And so what we're really trying to solve is this seed funding gap, because at the end of the day, we feel that innovation is being halted as a result. You have all these people with great ideas that are kind of trying to figure out how to get their thing funded. And then the only ones that are really making it are kind of having to, jump between SIBRs or something like that. And, they're always taking a detour. So we want to get the founders with the most innovative ideas funded.
Okay. So very cool. And I know, we'll hear from every venture capitalist who has been on this show out there. Yeah, you got to have a customer and let's get going, and where's the revenue and that kind of thing. And then we'll be willing to fund you. Whereas you're encountering that startup at a much earlier phase and pre-revenue, pre-target market definition, maybe. So how has your platform overcome that problem of, hey, there's no money coming in guaranteed for sure? Who is willing to take a risk here, and how have you structured that?
Well, it's actually a very similar risk to most seed investment. The difference between space and others is that that seed investment's a little bit lower number often. So when you're investing in seed, you're investing a lot of times in the team. The product may or may not 100% be there, but it's basically the team in the market you're really investing in. And so that's what we look for: someone that's got a very well developed business plan and go-to-market strategy with the technology that may or may not be 100% ready to go, but is really got a team that we can trust to make those steps and the pivots necessary. And the way that we accomplish that is through crowdfunding. So at the end of the day, everything about investment is managing risks, right? You're trying to figure out, I'm giving $1 million. What's the chance I lose all of that? And there's always a good chance as an investor, a pretty good chance you're losing a substantial portion, if not all of your money. Now, the best way to kind of mitigate that is to spread, instead of one person with $1 million risk, to spread that risk out amongst a lot more folks, right? A lot more people involved. Everyone with $100 risk, it's easier if you're risking $100. It's not, you don't want to throw $100 away, but it's not going to change your life, let's say, if you did that. So that's where, we are looking for investors, and we have investors already signed up to be those first investors that want to take that risk, want to be a part of the space ecosystem, willing to take the kind of the home run shot. And if they do get that, big win, then they're, one of the first investors in a company. Great odds, great odds in the sense that, for the risk you're putting out there. But yeah, that's the way we mitigate that, is by just spreading out the risk amongst a larger group of audience.
Okay. So space enthusiasts, instead of going to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and spending $200 on a dinner for a pair of people, will come and put their money in here. What are they getting in return? Are they getting shares of that company, or how is that structured?
Yeah, it's true equity. Now, there's a little bit of wiggle room in exactly what the security is, but it's a true SEC recognized security. So, sometimes it depends on, well, it's when the next funding happens. They may convert at that point, or they may convert into some kind of security when they sell out and they become an IPO or something, right? But it's an actual security. You come away with basically a document that says I own X percentage or what have you of this company. So there was a problem with crowdfunding back in the day when you think of Kickstarter and the Oculus Rift story, right, where they invested and then a few years later they're $1 billion company, and those folks that maybe they got a free, maybe they paid for an Oculus Rift ahead of time, but they were the ones who really gave them that first bump. And so since then, that's where the regulation crowdfunding industry has been trying to give those first supporters the benefit of when there is $1 billion company comes out of it, they'll make some money off of it.
Okay. Now, I heard you say a word, and that word was pivot not too long ago. And so that made me jump, because I was like, oh, all right. So I'm a guy and I'm investing a little bit of my hard-earned money into this company here because I like the people and maybe I like the idea in that. And so you're saying that the investors had better be ready for this thing to change a little bit and not be quite what you started off with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. So most of your VCs, right? They're looking for basically a guaranteed plan to say, okay, we're just going to scale up whatever you're making money with. So you already have your product, you're perfect, you're ready to go. Seed investors. So what we're investing in, right? We need to be willing to say, may take a few shots at this to figure out exactly how to solve this problem. We know there's a problem. We believe we have the solution. If not, we have a second and third solution that we may be able to jump on.
Okay. The platform is in its infancy. So, let's take these, answers with a grain of salt here. I'm just trying to kind of shine a light around it and get an idea. So folks are coming in. What money levels are we talking about here in terms of seed round funding? What's kind of the minimum that you would tell a company who comes to you saying, hey, I'd like to be part of the platform to expect?
Well, so the Reg CF industry is a growing industry right now. It's interesting and exciting. And actually, you look over in the UK, and they're like years ahead of us. It's kind of crazy as far as the way they've been able to kind of reduce limitations and things like that, which is not normal when you think of the US being kind of like a little bit freer around limitations and investing and things like that. But this is a growing industry now. Over the last several years, most of the companies that raise are needing a lot less cash. So they average somewhere in like the $200,000 to $300,000 range. And what the SEC is now basically allowing companies in Reg CF to do is raise up to 5 million. And so as a result of 5 million, you would expect those numbers to increase. It's hard to know exactly what that average is going to be. What we want to do is, for us, we want to see companies raise relatively regularly over 1 million to be able to really, capitalize or leverage, that money to be able to raise with other investors as well. And that's what's nice about Reg CF. It's not a one or the other option. It's not a complete disruptor. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of money needed to make these things happen. We need to bring all of the tools at our disposal to be able to make that happen rather than, limiting one or the other. So someone can raise with a Reg CF as well as, do our normal kind of Reg D, which is your normal standard raise with investors as well.
Okay. A guy like Michael Mealing at Starbridge is going to say, hey, I want you to look down the road 2 or 3 investment rounds and show me that that money is out there, right? That there is a path to further rounds of investment and hopefully an exit, right? What do you do, if anything, to help through the platform these company owners and founders who are coming to you prepare for that?
Yeah, so we have a couple of things. One is, there's a screening process, so we need to protect our investors as much as we help the companies on the other side. And so there's a screening process. If you're just not ready, we want to pair you with, there's cool accelerators and incubators out there that can really help you plan your business strategy, go to markets and all that. But also on the back end, so what we have, in addition to our folks that are screening deals, we have those folks that are still available to companies to be able to, connect them with business development opportunities. The term's still up in the air. We're calling right now our portfolio team that allows to, actually help and has connections with, big wigs at NASA or, business strategy at the large primes, that kind of thing, or corporate America, to be able to say, hey, I can help you with business, development. I can help you with X, Y, or Z. So, we actually, and just to explain our business model a little bit, we own a piece of the company. Every company comes to our platform, we get some cash, we get some actual equity in the company, the same as all the investors have. So we're very aligned with what the investors want. And so we want to give them the best chance to succeed ultimately. And we actually anticipate that most successful companies that come to our platform raise a sizable amount of money and have some level of success. They're almost guaranteed to need more money. So we have partnerships with VCs like Starbridge and things like that to say, hey, we need to take you from, seed funding that you got from the crowd, which is awesome. And now you're able to go to the next step with a VC, fill in the blank, space VC, or maybe just a larger VC as well, that they're going to be able to take you to the next, your Series A round and get you 10, 20 million or whatever that is.
Which is a lot in the space realm right now of VC funding. Okay. Yeah, it's not like out there in the rest of the world where $100 million is still chump change, right? We're not quite ready for that here. So tell me about what the process of an experience of building this platform was like. How did you get it programmed, and who fiddled around with that, and were there any setbacks, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so in the process of building, we're still building our investment portal itself. There's a FINRA regulation process we have to go through. It's relatively straightforward. There are plenty of others that have done it. We're not pioneering that by any stretch of the imagination. But what we also found was there's this gap in industry knowledge and understanding of what the industry really is. It's held by insiders like yourself and that kind of stuff. You spend years or decades in this industry, you start to understand what's going on. But we envision bringing a lot of net new investors and net new space investors, and there needs to be a way to get caught up on what this industry is pretty quickly. And as a result of building that, that's where we came across. We started pulling all these companies together. There's some of them may raise on our platform, some that may be way beyond our platform, some that may be too early. And we started creating this cool little data set, and that's where our data set of space-based came about, right? We need to be able to understand the industry ourselves to be able to, figure out what's a good opportunity for our platform and our investors. We also feel like our investors should be able to come in and just have a good knowledge of space within 5 minutes, have learned a lot more about space than they would have, left to their own devices.
Well, that is impressive, because I host a show interviewing
Yeah.
people in the industry, and I have no idea
Yeah.
how I would structure a piece of information to get them that much
Yeah.
information that quickly. Wow, you'd
It's
really have to hit
yeah,
the
it's not
highlights.
well, it's yeah. I mean, you know, there's obviously going to be holes. There always
Mm-hmm.
is. You can never see the entire story. But that was one of the things we wanted to do. We wanted to create something that's very robust. And part of building the actual application, you start to play around with things. You start to do visuals. You start to look at that, and you're like, well, this seems kind of obvious and that sort of thing. But really, the hard part was categorizing the data. So we went through and tagged every single one of our. We have 1,500 companies in our list, and we'll be adding more all the time. We went through and tagged every single one with what we call revenue generating activities, right? And to try and figure out where they would fit in a market map. And we're trying to build a bottom up approach that can be quite flexible and grow with the industry because it is growing, rather than trying to assign a certain, well, we think this is the way the industry is, it has to be this. We want to be flexible and grow. But part of that process is just like, okay, patterns start to emerge, and you start to see groupings of companies and kind of markets that develop, and that's where our market map came from. That's on our space base.
Right. This is the big logo heavy sort of layout thing. Okay. Yeah.
Well, we have a new one. We do have a
myself.
new one coming out. We
Good.
do have a new one coming
Okay.
out that's a lot more comprehensive. But I'm actually referring to the relatively small one on our data set online that you can click through and look at those sorts of things.
Okay.
That was a challenge. I mean, just trying to figure out what is a space company? Is it just SpaceX rockets? No, it's a lot bigger than that. And you try to understand all the applications around it. And there's still room to figure all that stuff out. But we're making strides and trying to get better every day.
Yeah, I imagine there's whole categories of businesses that haven't even appeared yet. That will, and we'll be, what kind of technology are you using for the platform? Is it all custom coded, or are you using an LMS somewhere or a database, or?
Yeah, we're just we're building on our own tech stack, a well-known kind of fintech tech stack of Rails and React, and that's what we're building. It's all customized though. So it's pretty well known in the fintech industry. A lot of the big Reg CF portals use that, so it just makes sense to kind of stay standard.
Okay. Have there been any big surprises on this route of launching this thing where you're like, whoa, I didn't realize they'd be using it that way, or we've got to change that?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of them. One was just the fact that the information, you kind of know that there's always value in education, generally speaking, but the fact that the information was so highly sought after, and we're having conversations with some of the leading VCs that we've already mentioned. They cling to this idea of the data set. They want to know the data set. They need more information because the pitch books or the Crunchbases of the world, they have great data sets, but they're not really focused on space, right? And so there's a huge kind of information gap there. We knew kind of that going in, so we had to go through it, but we also didn't realize just how big that was and how a big of a problem it was. And so that was one huge learning for us, is we need to figure out a way to close that gap. And then in general, it's just I'm surprised the number of people that are coming onto the space base every day to do stuff. We have a lot of business development in space startups. They're looking to find their other customers, right? So there's just a list of space companies. Oh, they have seed funding, and they may fit because they're in this kind of market. We weren't anticipating. We thought it could happen, but weren't really anticipating it to be used that much right off the bat. We had always thought of it as more of an investor use case, but there's clearly use cases beyond that.
This is just a question that struck me right now. What would you say the difference is between the data set that you're building and new space hubs, where they are getting used for the same thing? And I know I get prospected every day by people who come through that thing.
Yeah, we love New Space Hub and love what John Tucker is doing. It's an awesome data set. Really, what we're focused on long term is strictly the ability for a quick understanding from a public investor's perspective. At the end of the day, I want to be able to come in and understand things very quickly and be able to get a sense, and maybe be able to drill down to the individual companies. But yeah, total love what New Space Hub is doing. I'm a big fan of John Tucker and that team. I envision there's rooms to work together, a lot of room to work together to really create like a better understanding of what's going on in the industry.
Yeah, very, very cool. All right, well, let's I guess dig into a little bit about what it's like from the user's perspective, either side. How do they find you? What do they do? Do they log in and create a login, and then they're starting to get fed this information? Like, how does that work, that interaction?
Yeah, so right now, Spacebase is 100% public. You don't even have to sign up to have a user account. So you can go in and at your leisure and play around and find companies. And we're trying to build in more data every day. Right now, it's very as simple as possible. A company logo, a link to their site, and a quick description of what they do. We're adding more information as we go, founders and things like that. But yeah, you can go in and use it as you will and for what you will. We don't have any way to export that information yet. But that could be coming. So, who knows if you want to build your own little list of whatever it is you're doing. Within the next few months, we're planning on having actual user accounts that allow you to follow companies and vote companies and things like that. Because we really long-term want to have a crowdsource aspect of this where it's, being able to actually get as much information from many of these people as possible, because it's impossible to know everything that's going on, even though it's a little bit easier because it's a subsegment, of industry in general. It still is a growing industry that's incredibly growing incredibly fast. It's hard to keep track of. So we just need to be able to, be as scalable as possible with that aspect too. But if you want to come in, we do have an early access button that we'll be having once, or we have it already, but it'll go live when investments are live, which we're targeting for Q1, to be able to go in and, find investments. You go look through a list of companies that are doing actual offerings. You click in there, you review the company pitch, watch a little video, right? And you click the Invest Now button when you're ready. And then the payment information, all that stuff follows.
Okay. How will you be accepting payment? Will it be from payment processors, PayPal, or bank accounts?
As many options as possible. Okay. There'll probably be, there's always some business considerations when you're trying to figure out what payment processors and costs and all that stuff. We want to, at the end of the day, the goal here is to create accessibility for, the general space geek, the general space enthusiast, to be able to come in and be a part of the space industry. So we don't want to have any kind of barriers. I imagine there'll be some that we're trying to continually just eliminate as we go. But yeah, that's, basically anything. Generally you start with like an ACH option and expand into credit cards and things like that down the road.
Okay. Yeah. It's not your responsibility, but investing by credit card, I don't know.
Yeah.
As a former credit manager.
Thing,
right? All right. I guess you've mentioned a few things that have stood out to me as far as culture goes. I'm a big culture guy. I really believe in the value of deliberately creating culture. It's here I'm hearing things like speed, accessibility, teaching, that sort of thing, informative content. What other things about the culture that you're working on here would you like to sort of present to the world as like, we stand for these things?
Probably those things came out because that's really what we're focused on, right? Is accessibility, speed, and usability come into this aspect of accessibility. But this whole thing, the genesis was me feeling like I want to be a part of the industry and I wanted to invest in, the SpaceX's or the future SpaceX's and all that stuff, right? And that's where this all came from. So, maybe it's just that kind of mentality. We want to bring together everyone that has a future vision of humanity in space and on the moon and Mars and all that stuff to be able to make that actually happen. And so, generally speaking, a lot of folks that are working on our product are just massive space geeks. And we all have an aligned vision that's way bigger than what we're actually doing. I mean, what are we getting? We can't actually guarantee there's going to be a colony on Mars. We want to do everything we can to make sure that does happen in our lifetimes.
Okay, yeah. So it's not just creating this funding source. It's also the idea of being able to creating a vehicle to fuel these dreams, right? Which are closer to reality every day. If I'm a founder and I approach you guys today, how long will that process take until we're able to get a page up on the website with our pitch and all that stuff and be able to accept funding?
Yeah, so there's kind of two answers. Once we're live in Q1, the standardized sort of time frame we're shooting for is about 6 weeks. So there's a Form C, it's an SEC requirement you have to go through. So you can't just you could fill that out overnight, I guess, but it's the type of thing you probably shouldn't just fill out quickly and not double check. So that's the sort of thing, back and forth. There are going to be some compliance folks and lawyers involved. We should always be extra lawyers involved on your end, because at the end of the day, if you're a founder, you're trying to raise, you are putting an offering out there. It's between you and the public, and the SEC is looking at you, right, as the person making that offering. So there needs to be that. And we also have, so part of that 6 week is not just the Form C, but you're doing other things. You're building your pitch, and you're also, at the very beginning, you're going through an application process with us. So we have, industry space insiders that are, reviewing things, because at the end of the day, I cannot really claim to understand all the technology. Brant and I can't really claim to understand the technology. Someone could pitch us an anti-gravity device that, in theory, we could let slip through the cracks, because we don't know how to, call BS on it, right? So in that scenario, we have folks that can help us with that do due diligence alongside of us, that have dozens or tens of decades of experience in space that help us with the technology, as well as the actual business angle and venture and background, that kind of thing as well.
Okay, so about 6 weeks to be able to get the offer up there. And then Are you running it like Kickstarter, where there's a minimum threshold and a sort of a delivery drop dead date where they have to raise it or everybody gets refunded, kind of thing?
Yeah, so that is technically figured out by the company. What we would suggest, though, is to keep that relatively small. So unlike Kickstarter, where a lot of times there's actually an economy of scale that has to be hit in order to actually supply products or what have you. These are investments. So after a certain number of costs are covered, what you'll see is you're actually getting an investor, and you're actually, you're giving out equity, and you can actually start using that on a rolling basis. Generally speaking, they close on a monthly basis. So
I see.
We tend to say you should have some relatively small, number. Generally, that falls between, if you look at what's out there in the industry, between as low as 15, maybe 50,000. It'll probably fall in there. We would encourage that rather than setting $1 million bar, and if you got 750, then no, everyone's sitting there waiting for it to convert, and it never does. Yeah. So.
Right. Okay. Well, very cool. All right. Well, Aaron, have we missed anything that you would like to mention, or have we covered everything?
Not anything off the top of my head. Just I do think that we'd love to have as many folks as possible that are interested. So we are, we have a get early access button on our site. So if people come in and they are interested at some point in investing, it's no guarantee. You're just showing your interest. That helps us to gauge the level of interest and be able to continue to promote to our founders and things like that.
Cool. So the best place for people who are interested on either the buying or the selling side, the investing or the collecting side, is to go to that website. I'll link to it in the description below and sign up. Very cool. Yeah,
the big get early access button, that's more for the investors, and then founders. We have several dozen founders who've already found the link that's kind of at the bottom of the page to raise, or there's another page called raise that you'd be able to go apply. And really, we're collecting all that information and preparing for our launch, and founders can expect to hear from us over the next few months.
Excellent, excellent. Well, my guest has been Aaron Burnett, co-founder of Spaced Ventures with his buddy, Brant Arsenault. I'll link to that interview as well in the description below. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, I appreciate the time, Jason. It's been fun.
You bet. Hey, this is Jason Kanigan, the host of the program. Thanks a lot for listening to the Cold Star Project. If you want me to send you new episodes of the Cold Star Project so that you don't have to go hunting around for them or watching YouTube or anything like that, go to this page, coldstartech.com/MSB. That's short for Make Space Boring, which is what we're all about. And drop in your email address there, and I will be able to do that for you. Make Space Boring is another little show that I run. It's a shorter format, quick interviews, and news of the day, and sometimes an update of who I'm meeting and what I'm learning in the space field. It's on the same Cold Star Tech channel. Speaking of which, on the YouTube channel, I can do something I cannot do on the audio-only version, which is add playlists. And so there may be topic area playlists on the YouTube channel that you would be interested in digging into and going down the rabbit hole and learning more about. For example, space law and policy, space situational awareness, lunar mining and construction and fun stuff like that. So go check that out. That is at coldstartech.com/play. That's the short link to get there. Anyway, thanks.